Music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Friday, December 27th, 2019. Coming up this hour,
U.S. stocks begin the day at a fresh record with Apple and Amazon leading the way.
Equities in Asia trade at 18-month highs thanks to a boost from the tech sector.
And shares of Tesla gain as the company moves closer to its debut in China.
A major victory for embattled Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, plus police locate a suspect linked to the murder of Barnard student Tessa Majors. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm Rob Bushka. Coming up in sports, Julius Randle continues to impress as the Knicks win in Brooklyn, and it's back to work for all three local teams on the frozen floor.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Amy Morris.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are higher after yesterday's record close for equities. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 8.5 points this morning. Dow futures up 95. NASDAQ futures up 34. The DAX in Germany's up 0.4%. CAC in Paris up 0.5%. FTSE 100 up 1/3%. Nikkei 225 in Japan was down 1/3%, while the Hang Seng in Hong Kong jumped 1.3%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.88%. Yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil up 1/3% or 21 cents at 61.89 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1% or $1.80 to 15.1620 an ounce. The euro 1.1150 against the dollar, and the yen 109.48. Amy.
Karen, let's begin with fresh economic data out of China, showing profit at industrial companies rebounded in November. For details, we turn to Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
Industrial profits rose 5.4% from a year ago. This follows 3 months of declines, including a 9.9% drop back in October. We're seeing factory gate deflation ease and domestic demand improve. Now, the government says the recovery was helped by an improvement in both industrial production and sales. And private companies fared even better, seeing a 14.7% growth rate. This appears to be further stabilization in the economy. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Brian, thank you. We also have data out of Japan showing industrial production fell for the second straight month in November. Factory production dropped 0.9% from a month earlier, though that did little to dampen sentiment in Asia overnight. Stocks in the region traded at 18-month highs thanks to a boost from the tech sector. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with the details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Karen. Hong Kong and Taiwanese shares outperformed as Apple suppliers in the region rallied after Apple extended its record run Thursday in the US, remaining on track for its best annual performance in a decade. Stocks in Tokyo were mixed as a number of Japanese companies traded without the right to their next dividend payment. Some South Korean companies also traded ex-dividend, but the Kospi was up by 1/3%. Chinese equities saw modest declines. Elsewhere, Australian stocks rose for a second session, while bargain hunters moved in on the record-breaking NZX 50, sending that index down 0.4% in Wellington. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sally, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, Juliet. Back here in the U.S., we enter the day with stocks trading at a record. On the year, the S&P 500 is up more than 29%, while analysts don't expect another gain like that next year. Most expect a solid performance. Michael Purvis is CEO at Tallbeck and Capital Advisors.
For 2020, I think we can expect another good year in the markets. Won't be as good as 2019, but easily a 10-12% year. We're talking about a stable economic condition. We're talking about a Federal Reserve that's certainly, I would be surprised if they raise, but I'd be also equally surprised if they cut. We don't see a recession, around the corner. We're looking at bond yields that are low and stable. Even if they do climb up, which I expect they will be doing so in, I think, a pretty moderate way as they just simply adjust to sort of a very static Fed condition. inflation.
At the moment, Fed funds futures predict one rate cut at most from the central bank next year. Bloomberg customers can access the data by typing WIRP GO on their terminal.
Gains from Apple and Amazon pushed the Nasdaq Composite above 9,000 for the first time yesterday. Shares of Amazon rose 4.5% after touting record-breaking holiday season results. The company said it sold more than 1 billion items, and Prime delivery nearly quadrupled from last year.
Shares of Apple are up 83% on the year, poised for their best annual performance in a decade. And they could see another 20% gain next year. That's according to Dan Ives, Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities.
900 million iPhones worldwide. About a third of those, 350 million, have not upgraded in 39 months. And I think we are going into a super cycle. 5G is going to be on the tail end of that. And I think when you look at that and mining the install base, some of the parts, I think this is a rereading stock that continues to go higher. Continue to look out 2-3 years, you could see a stock that now starts to approach $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion in terms of that core thesis playing out over the next 2 years.
Dan Ives is one of the most bullish analysts on Apple with a price target of $350.
Ives is also boosting his target on Tesla to $370. At the same time, the company plans to start delivering its first cars built in China on Monday. It also lined up $1.6 billion in financing from local banks for its new factory in Shanghai. Shares of Tesla are up nearly 1% in early trading.
In Europe, we're seeing shares of a Dutch molecular testing firm down nearly 20% after ending talks to be acquired. For details, we bring in Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Caroline Hepker live from London. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Karen and Amy. Kyogen said in mid-November that it had received interest from potential buyers, but the company says now that the proposals are not compelling and that it will remain independent. Kyogen, which provides DNA testing platforms for doctors and researchers, has been through a tumultuous time. In October, it cut its outlook and announced the departure of its 27-year veteran CEO. But suitors remain interested, say analysts, and another bid may emerge. Live in London, I'm Caroline Hepker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Caroline, thank you. Another high-ranking executive out at Boeing. This time, a key legal advisor working on the 737 crisis is stepping down. Michael Luddig, who's in charge of legal matters related to the 2 deadly MAX crashes, will retire at year-end. The departure comes just 3 days after CEO Dennis Muilenburg resigned. S&P futures up 8 points this morning. Dow futures up 95. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
It's 6:07 on Wall Street. Let's bring in Michael Barr to find out what else is going on in the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Amy. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu scored a landslide victory in a primary race for leadership of the ruling Likud party. It gives the embattled leader an important boost ahead of the country's third election in less than a year. The strong showing by Israel's longest-serving leader could give him another opportunity to form a government following the March election after falling short in 2 previous attempts this year. A Kazakhstan plane with 98 people aboard has crashed shortly after takeoff early today, leaving at least a dozen people dead. At least 66 others have survived with injuries. How will President Trump's impeachment trial impact the markets? Isaac Boltanski, the Compass Point Director of Policy Research, spoke with David Weston on Bloomberg Balance of Power. Boltanski says the impeachment trial will have very little impact on the markets, but as for the House Speaker...
As for the timeline here, I truly think that Speaker Pelosi's strategy to extend this negotiating period is bearing out some fruit at this point, and that we already have some pushback from at least one senator about what the process will look like, and who knows what this storyline will be in just a week.
That GOP senator is Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. She was disturbed to hear Majority Leader Mitch McConnell say there would be total coordination between the White House and the Senate over the upcoming presidential impeachment trial. Virginia Democratic Congressman Jerry Connolly says McConnell's statement about House Democrats not wanting to do their job is wrong because it was the White House who told witnesses to refuse to testify.
I thought it was very disingenuous on the part of Mitch McConnell to say the House now wants the Senate to do its job because they didn't interview them. Well, we didn't interview them because they would not cooperate with a subpoena or with the request to testify under White House direction.
The NYPD says they have questioned a 14-year-old wanted for the stabbing death of a Barnard College student. Authorities describe finding the third subject in the Tessa Majors investigation as a significant development. Police say the family of the 14-year-old was shielding him until a bite mark on his hand healed. For now, the teen has been released without charges. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Amy.
All right, thank you, Michael. It is 6:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Amy. Even when things aren't going right for the Knicks and the Nets, the pride of the city is at stake, and the rivalry was renewed again in Brooklyn.
Morris, pull-up jumper, it's good. Knocked down by Chandler. He's going to the line for a chance at three.
MSG on the call as the Knicks beat the Nets 94-82 after holding the Nets to just 15 points in the first quarter. Elsewhere in the East, the Pistons blast the Wizards 132-102. Everything else out west is MVP candidate Luka Doncic made his return after a 2-week layoff with a bad ankle, leading Dallas to a win at home over San Antonio. Memphis won in OKC. Timberwolves in double overtime beat the Kings, while the Jazz blast the Blazers, courtesy of Donovan Mitchell, who scored 35. It's back to work for all three local clubs on the ice tonight. Rangers coach David Quinn says his team needs to execute better.
We get it, we hold it, we stick handle it, we look for a pretty pass instead of just moving around and playing hockey within a power play, and it's killing us right now. I mean, these are games that we've done a lot of good things 5-on-5. We put ourselves in a position to win. We've improved in a bunch of areas, but you got to win the special teams. You got to score power play goals when you get 5 or 6.
The Rangers host the Hurricanes, while the Devils entertain the Maple Leafs, and the Islanders visit the Blackhawks. And Christmas came on the 26th for the Giants' Marcus Golden, who had a stat corrected officially, bumping him from 9.5 sacks to 10, but it earned him a $1 million incentive bonus. And college football bowl games, Louisiana Tech shut out Miami. Pitt beat Eastern Michigan for their first win since 2013. And 5 more games starting at noon today. That's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Amy?
All right, thank you, Rob. We want you to tune in tonight for the Bloomberg Business of Sports show. We'll speak with John Curry, athletic director at Wake Forest, ahead of today's Pinstripe Bowl. That's against Michigan State. Catch that conversation tonight at 8 and tomorrow morning at 11 right here on Bloomberg Radio, or subscribe to the show, Business of Sports, wherever you get your podcasts. This is Bloomberg.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Housework. If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, get up to 50% off showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. Selected ranges excluded. See wix.co.uk.
Start 2020 as a millionaire. 10 guaranteed UK millionaires in this New Year's Eve's Euro Millions.
Whoa, that's a massive number.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Take 26.
Enjoy Taylor's Select Reserve Port, available for just £7.50, or Oyster Bay Sauvignon and many more for just £7 each.
I know it's Christmas, but you're getting overexcited again.
Our latest deal, Co-op, is what we do.
Offer subject to availability until stocks last on selected lines. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 3rd of January. Please drink responsibly.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Bloomberg Television. Here's Sherry Ann.
Now with me is Cornell Capital partner Ann Berry, and great to have you with us. So Kriti was just mentioning this huge rally that we're seeing, right, towards the year end, and consumer stocks really leading. What is this telling us about the health of the consumer here in America and whether this can continue going into 2020?
There's the health of the consumer as they stand today, and then there's what we may look out to see in 2020. Consumer spendings remain strong. The unemployment levels have remained low. We've seen a little bit of increases in wages, so you can understand the consumer feeling somewhat robust. I think what's going to be interesting, though, as we move into 2020 is whether we do see the Phase 1 trade agreement actually signed. Is that going to translate into investment, into manufacturing orders, and therefore into jobs, and truly into new job creation, and truly into seeing whether there's wage increases?
In 2020, also January 1st, actually, we're going to see more than 20 states here in the U.S. increase the minimum wage, right? What does that mean in terms of the economy and the markets? Because it could be a plus for people spending more, they have more money, but at the same time, businesses have to spend more in order to pay these increases.
Well, I think in terms of thinking about which sectors this impact, particularly when you look at the outsourced business services space, really trying to understand how much of this wage increase can actually pass through ultimately.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks climbing worldwide today, propelling global benchmarks to fresh records as robust gains in retail and technology shares make 2019 a year to remember for risk assets. Equities are getting a lift from reports of strong holiday season revenue, with e-commerce sales surging from Amazon.com to MasterCard spending pulse. The dollar is slipping for a second day, and gold is heading for its biggest weekly advance in more than 4 months, setting the metal up for its best year since 2010. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg, with S&P futures up 8 points this morning. Dow futures up 89, NASDAQ futures up 31, the DAX in Germany's up 0.4%. 10-year Treasury up 2/32, yield 1.88%, yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil up 1/3% or 23 cents at $61.91 a barrel. COMEX gold is up less than 0.1% now, up 90 cents at $15.30 an ounce. The euro 1.1148 against the dollar. The British pound also rising against the dollar at 1.3074, and the yen at 109.49. Banks around the world are unveiling the biggest round of job cuts in 4 years as they slash costs to weather a slowing economy and adapt to digital technology. This year, more than 50 lenders have announced plans to cut a combined 77,780 jobs, the most since 2015, according to filings by the companies and labor unions. Banks in Europe, which face the the added burden of negative interest rates for years to come account for almost 82% of the total. The UK's competition regulator opened an in-depth probe of Amazon.com's purchase of a minority stake in UK food startup Deliveroo after the companies failed to submit remedies to ease competition concerns. And Tesla will start delivering China-built cars on Monday, a major milestone for Elon Musk's company as it mounts a push to expand in the world's largest electric vehicle market. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, thank you very much. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted a giant victory after a landslide win in a primary race for leadership of the ruling Likud party. The strong showing could give him another opportunity to form a government following the March election after falling short in 2 previous attempts this year. A Kazakhstan plane with 98 people aboard has crashed shortly after takeoff early today, killing at least a dozen people. The aircraft hit a concrete fence and a 2-story building after takeoff from Almaty International Airport. A strong typhoon that barreled through the central Philippines has left at least 28 dead and 12 missing, forcing thousands to flee their homes. A disaster response officer described one coastal area as a ghost town on Christmas Day. Tony Award-winning composer Jerry Herman, who wrote the music and lyrics for such classic shows as Hello Dolly, Maine, and La Cage aux Folles, has died. Herman was the creator of 10 Broadway shows and contributor to several more. Jerry Herman was 88. In the NBA, the Knicks beat the Nets 94-82. The Wizards lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Amy.
All right, thank you, Michael. And it's coming up at 6:21 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Joining us now, Bloomberg's Karen Lee in Hong Kong. Karen, thanks for taking the time. I know a lot is going on in Hong Kong at this hour. The protests continue. What is planned for this weekend?
Well, it's kicking off shortly in Sha Tin, which is an area that has seen some of the worst violence in the past 6 months of protests. And it'll continue over the weekend with protests in an area near the Chinese border. And we're going to be watching all of this pretty closely to see what the turnout is like, what the clashes are like between protesters and police, if there are clashes, as we lead up to a major rally that's been planned for New Year's Day by the Civil Human Rights Front, which is the group that's helmed some of the biggest peaceful protests in the city since this all began in June. And so right now, that's what people are looking towards in terms of an indicator as to how much momentum this movement is going to sustain going into 2020.
Now, there was a lot of unrest seen around the Christmas holiday. Can you ascertain whether these clashes are getting worse or more violent?
You know, I mean, at this point, it's become kind of a new normal for the city to see tear gas being fired in places where people never imagined tear gas being fired. And Christmas Eve wasn't an exception. Police fired tear gas at crowds in pretty popular shopping districts in front of the Peninsula Hotel, which is this really old, venerated hotel in the middle of a pretty heavily populated area. So while it doesn't look like it's getting worse, it does look like it's continuing into the new year. And I think for a lot of people, that's what they're watching right now.
Demonstrators do appear to be focused mostly on those shopping areas. Why is that?
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's a number of reasons. Hong Kong doesn't have a lot of places to gather publicly. It's very, very compressed here. So you're always looking for like where you can get thousands of people together. At the same time, the protesters have looked to hit Hong Kong where it hurts, including the retail industry and tourism, which have both taken a major hit in the past 6 months. So by gathering the shopping center, you're helping do that. And at the same time, like the shopping centers here also serve purposes that malls in the U.S. Often don't. They connect to the MTR, which is the subway system, or they center of whole residential and shopping developments. So it's hard to really ascertain if there's a real strategy behind gathering at shopping centers beyond the fact that they are convenient, but they are someplace that's going to hit Hong Kong's economy and a place where it doesn't necessarily want to be hit.
Now, Karen, we've got about a minute here, but I want to get an idea from you about the end game to this. We know about the extradition legislation setting all of this off, but that was some time ago, back last summer. What's the goal now?
Yeah, these protests very quickly morphed into a movement against Beijing's grip and for more democracy. And protesters have had 5 demands throughout the summer. And what they want now are kind of more immediate demands. They want an independent inquiry into police conduct and this really aggressive behavior they say we've seen from police, shooting rubber bullets and tear gas. And at one point in recent weeks, really turning college campuses into these what look like battle zones. So that's you could argue, their biggest demand right now. And they also want people who've been arrested for rioting and arrested during the course of these protests released. And for a lot of people who say that both sides are really digging their heels in, those 2 concessions in particular are concessions that could start to make this all die down. At the same time, we're going to see this continue into 2020, and those demands could morph again.
All right. Our thanks to Bloomberg's Karen Lee in Hong Kong, where those riots and the unrest continues. Much more to come on Bloomberg Daybreak. S&P futures showing a quarter point higher, rather. Dow futures up 0.3%. Much more to come on Bloomberg Daybreak. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks will rise again today on Wall Street, setting even more records thanks to the big Christmas rush that left online retailers especially flush. The Dow could add another 59 points when the markets open. Apple stock, one of the tech companies, trading at new record highs. Everscore says Apple's iPods and iPhones were high on shoppers' wish list this year. Apple stock is up 80% so far in 2019, its best year in a decade. Gold prices also having their best year since 2010. An ounce now costs more than $1,500. Wheat prices are expected to get a little bump up, too, on word that China will import more wheat from the U.S. once that trade deal is signed. Tesla will deliver its first Model 3 in China on Monday, and those cars will be exempt from China's extra 10% tax. And more hard-boiled eggs and egg products are being recalled from Trader Joe's, Walmart, and Costco over listeria concerns. 80 different products, 30 different brands, including Trader Joe's egg salad. 7 people in 5 states have been sickened. I'm Chuck Kamlick, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Start 2020 as a millionaire. 10 guaranteed UK millionaires in this New Year's Eve's Euro Millions.
Whoa, that's a massive number.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Take 26.
Enjoy Taylor's Select Reserve Port, available for just £7.50, or Oyster Bay Sauvignon and many more for just £7 each.
I know it's Christmas, but you're getting overexcited again.
Our latest deal, Co-op, is what we do.
Offer subject to availability until stocks last on selected lines. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 3rd of January. Please drink responsibly.
On a morning that could herald the darkest of days, one man is running late, like proper late. Starring Kevin Davis in his one-man race against the McDonald's 10:30 breakfast deadline.
I'll stop you there, mate. Breakfast's now served until 11 a.m, so there's no rush, no drama.
Triathlon is coming, and for those taking part, the effects of going booze-free for a month could soon become apparent. Audio hallucinations barely proved to be a problem for many, with some beer pull reporting the appearance of their favourite drink, beer and there, in the things they overbeer. It is not believed that the absence of alcohol directly affects the beer canal, but it is beer that symptoms can severely worsen until barely every word sufferer's beer is the beer, 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 beer.
No alcohol for January for Cancer Research UK. Sign up at triathlon.org and together we will beat cancer.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa, on a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. Atoll protected.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Amy Morris.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. The 2019 bull run continues, with stocks around the world climbing to fresh records. All three major U.S. indexes hit all-time highs yesterday, with the Nasdaq closing above 9,000 for the first time. But there should be some caution in the new year, according to Citigroup Chief U.S. Equity Strategist Tobias Lefkovich.
Just did a survey of one of our clients, and they're not particularly bullish. Over 70% think that you're more likely to see a 20% correction than a 20% rally. So they've seen this rally. They're a bit concerned. Maybe it's gone a bit too far. And money flows continue to come out of markets.
The S&P 500 is up 29% this year, while the Nasdaq has surged 36%.
On the other side of the world, we're seeing positive economic news out of China. We get that story from Bloomberg's Selena Wang in Beijing.
Profits at Chinese industrial enterprises rebounded in November. That's as factory gate deflation eased and domestic demand improved. Industrial profits rose 5.4% in the month from a year earlier. That's after 3 months of declines, including October's record 9.9% slump. In Beijing, I'm Selena Wang, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Selena, thank you. In corporate news, Tesla will start delivering China-built cars on Monday as it mounts a push to expand in the world's largest electric vehicle market. The stock, which has more than doubled since June, is up another 1% in early trading.
Another high-ranking Boeing executive working on the company's 737 MAX crisis is stepping down. Boeing says 65-year-old Michael Ludwig is retiring at the end of the year. He was in charge of legal matters related to the 2 deadly MAX crashes.
In Europe, shares of Dutch molecular testing firm Qiagen down almost 20%. The company is ending discussions with potential acquirers, which has decided to continue as a standalone company. Now let's get you up to date on how stocks are faring. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are higher this morning, up 7.5 points. Dow futures up 88, and Nasdaq futures up 29. The DAX in Germany's up 0.4%. The CAC in Paris is up 0.5%, and the FTSE 100 up 0.3%. 10-year Treasury up 2/30 seconds, yield 1.88%. The yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.25% or 15 cents at $61.84 a barrel. And COMEX gold is little changed, up 40 cents at $15.1480 an ounce. The euro 1.1148 against the dollar. The British pound at 1.3073, and the yen this morning at 109.50. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
It's 6:33 on Wall Street. Let's bring in Michael Barr to tell us what else is going on in the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Amy. A Kazakhstan plane with 98 people aboard has crashed shortly after takeoff early today, killing at least a dozen people. At least 66 others survived with injuries. The aircraft hit a concrete fence and a 2-story building after takeoff from Almaty International Airport. In a statement, the airport says there was no fire and a rescue operation got underway immediately following the crash. Israel's embattled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu received a much-needed boost with a landslide victory in the race to lead his Likud party. The Prime Minister will now lead Likud into Israel's third election in less than a year on March 2nd. Months of protests in Iraq are showing no signs of letting up. New America fellow Douglas Ollivant spoke with David Weston on Bloomberg Balance of Power. Ollivant says the protest started in October when the Iraqi government fired a very popular general who led the anti-ISIS fight.
His firing inspired a small demonstration, and that demonstration was put down very hard by the Iraqi government, as in they used live rounds and tear gas canisters and killed several of the demonstrators. That just sparked this youth movement.
Iraq's president has offered to resign amid the protests. A 14-year-old boy suspected in the fatal stabbing of a Barnard College freshman has been released from NYPD custody only hours after investigators said he had been located following a 2-week manhunt. Chief of Detectives Rodney Harrison says finding the suspect was a significant development in the investigative process. The teen is one of 3 youths police believe were involved in the stabbing of 18-year-old Tessa Majors at Morningside Park. The CBD industry is poised to end the year with record growth, and much of it is thanks to dietary supplements and cosmetics. Nancy Lyons reports from the Bloomberg 99.1 Washington newsroom.
Cannabidiol, or CBD, is being touted for its calming properties and ability to reduce inflammation.
Which is why you're seeing a lot of topical creams that are using CBD, or even makeup in some cases.
Bloomberg Law's Jackie Lee says the FDA, though, is worried about some of the claims being made.
If you are saying this product will cure something or will help treat a disease, then the FDA can step in and say, hey, this is a misbranded or adulterated product or drug, and so you need to stop producing it or you need to change your marketing tactics.
The FDA is now looking into possible interactions creams and supplements might have with other drugs. In Washington, Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Amy.
All right, thank you, Michael. It's 6:36 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Amy. Local bragging rights were on the line last night at Barclays Center as the Knicks and Nets began their post-Christmas Day schedule.
Morris, pull-up jumper. It's good. Knocked down by Chandler. He's going to the line for a chance at 3. A long 2 from up top.
Knicks radio as they held Brooklyn to 15 in the first quarter, never looked back for a 94-82 win. They're third in the last 16 games. The Nets shot just 26% from the floor, scoring a season-low 82, and Brooklyn guard Spencer Dinwiddie summed it up best in the postgame, saying they had simply had too much eggnog. Detroit blasted Washington. Luka Doncic making a hard push for MVP. Returned for the first time in 2 weeks from an ankle injury. He was 2 assists shy of a triple-double as Dallas beat San Antonio. Memphis topped OKC. Minnesota beat Sacramento in double overtime, while Utah buried Portland to improve to 12-3 at home. To the frozen floor, all 3 teams resume play tonight after the holiday. Islanders face off in Chicago at 8:30, where Anders lead despite being in second place, says there's room for improvement.
I think just in general, it's just the mentality of cleaning things up that we wanted to clean up. I think we're still missing a few spots, so get back to what has made us successful and in the past, and right now we're nowhere near where we need to be.
The Rangers and Devils will skate at home as Carolina visits the Rangers, while New Jersey hosts Toronto. College football, Pitt won their first bowl game since 2013, knocking off Eastern Michigan, and Miami was shut out by Louisiana Tech. And the Giants' Marcus Golden earned a $1 million incentive bonus when the league on Thursday changed his sack total from 9.5 to 10 upon further review. The Giants host the Eagles in the season finale on Sunday. That's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Amy?
All right, thank you, Rob. Some other stories we're watching today. Tiffany reporting a sales rebound in the run-up to Christmas with growth led by shoppers in China. Overall sales increased 5 to 7% in the Asia-Pacific region as Tiffany revamped its flagship store in Shanghai. That's good news for LVMH, which is buying the U.S. brand for more than $16 billion. Meanwhile, things are starting to look up for luxury real estate, with prices set to rise in some key markets. According to global property consultancy Knight Frank, home prices in Paris will lead gains, followed by Miami and Berlin. At the same time, though, Knight Frank sees luxury real estate in New York and Vancouver remaining in a slump. It's 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
I'm Shira Ovide, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. Washington politicians are fighting about an app called TikTok. This sounds silly, but it's a serious dilemma about the internet's future. TikTok lets people record short skits or dance routines set to music. It's owned by a Chinese company, and some lawmakers say that makes TikTok a threat. They're worried that information about Americans could wind up with the Chinese government. They fear TikTok could be used to spread a sanitized view of China. The company says these fears are unfounded. But there's something profound here. Most of the online technologies that Americans use are made by U.S. companies. TikTok is really the first widely used app from a country with which the U.S. has fundamental disagreements. And that means this is the first time that Americans have had to confront what it means for the internet to become less American. I'm Shira Ovide. For more opinion, please go to BloombergOpinion.com/opinion or OPIN GO on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
Bloomberg Opinion commentaries are heard every weekday at this time. Here's the Bloomberg Green Report with Bob Moon.
A rare environmental success story is unfolding in the waters off the U.S. West Coast. Bottom trawler fishermen, those who use nets to scoop up rockfish, sole, Pacific Ocean perch, and other deep-dwelling fish, are making a comeback, reinventing themselves as a sustainable industry less than 2 decades after authorities closed huge stretches of the Pacific Ocean because of dwindling fish stocks. The ban devastated fishermen, but on January 1st, regulators will reopen an area roughly 3 times the size of Rhode Island off Oregon and California to groundfish bottom trawling. Environmental groups that were once the industry's biggest opponents collaborated on a long-term plan that will continue to revive the groundfish industry while protecting thousands of square miles of reefs and coral beds. Now, the fishermen who see their livelihood returning are looking to drum up consumer demand for fish that haven't been in grocery stores or on menus for a generation. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Thanks, Bob. A morning pointing toward gains in the equity markets. Ahead of the open, S&P futures a 1/4 point higher. Dow futures 0.3% higher. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all. Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This is Martin here loves being his own boss, but staying on top of all the tax rules used to drive him up the stud wall. This 31st of January self-assessment deadline, however, Martin won't be hitting the roof. Just a few buttons. He's using QuickBooks Self-Employed to make sure his tax bill is all above board. It tracks income and expenses, so he always knows what he owes. You could say he smashed it.
Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. Intuit QuickBooks.
On a morning that could herald the darkest of days, one man is running late, like proper late. starring Kevin Davis in his one-man race against the McDonald's 10:30 breakfast deadline.
I'll stop you there, mate. Breakfast's now served until 11 a.m, so there's no rush, no drama.
Triathlon is coming, and the idea of not drinking during January is having a startling effect on many of us Brits. In mead, it can do strange things inside of one's head. Gin rum circumstances, people actually miss beer words as alcoholic beverages. Why this happens isn't something P know. At this point, it can be sherry worrying, but merely shows that an absinthe from booze might be a good thing, not least to raise money for Cancer Research UK. It's tough, but give it a shot, and together we will beat cancer. Sign up at triathlon.org.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
To LeBron, slam dunk! The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
Hard pulls back, trying to make it 11-2. Kawhi Leonard is all over the place. 84-75, 27 for the board man.
This Saturday, the Toronto Raptors are at the Boston Celtics. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Connecting decision makers to a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
News from Hawaii, where the Coast Guard is searching for a helicopter that failed to return from a tour last night. Correspondent Dan Simon is monitoring the rescue and recovery efforts.
The search for this missing helicopter is taking place off the island of Kauai. This helicopter had been touring around the Nepali coast, which of course is known for its beautiful coastlines and really its amazing views. There were 7 people on board.
2 of the passengers believed to be children. In Kazakhstan, a plane with 98 people aboard crashed seconds after takeoff, killing at least 12 people, while 54 were hospitalized with injuries. There was no fire. That storm that unleashed heavy rain and lots of snow on Southern California, snarling the post-Christmas travel on major routes, is now moving into the Four Corners area with snow and ice. Stock futures are showing gains across the boards this hour, following yesterday's trading that pushed the S&P and the Dow to new highs and the Nasdaq over 9,000. I'm Michael Toscano.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are moving higher this morning, along with stocks worldwide, propelling global markets to fresh records as robust gains in retail and technology shares make 2019 a year to remember for risk assets. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 8.5 points. Dow futures up 96. Nasdaq futures up 34. The DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury up 2/32. Yield 1.88%. The yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.3% or 19 cents at $61.87 a barrel. COMEX gold little change down 20 cents to $15.1420 an ounce. The euro 1.1146 against the dollar. It is rising against the dollar. So is the British pound up 0.6% against the dollar at 1.3076. And the yen is at 109.50. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, a Kazakhstan plane with 98 people aboard crashed shortly after takeoff early today, killing at least a dozen people. Almost 50 remain hospitalized with injuries. The U.S. Coast Guard says a tour helicopter with 7 people aboard is missing in Hawaii. The helicopter has an electronic locator, but no signals had been received. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has shored up his base with a landslide primary victory in the Likud party primary. Netanyahu will need a big win in national elections in March if he hopes to stay in office and gain immunity from prosecution on corruption charges. The Tony Award-winning composer who wrote the music and lyrics for such classic shows as Mame, Hello Dolly, and La Cage aux Folles has died. Jerry Herman was 88. In the NBA, the Knicks beat the Nets 94-82. The Wizards lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Amy.
All right, thank you, Michael. And we're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. It is 6:49 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C. And it's a quiet week inside the Beltway. Lawmakers and the president are all out of town on holiday. But those talks are still going on behind the scenes over the upcoming impeachment trial in the Senate. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi holding on to those articles of impeachment for now. Let's get some insight now from Brown University political science professor Wendy Schiller. She joins us now. Professor, thanks for taking the time with us. And, the Wall Street Journal today pointing out it's now been more than a week since the House impeached the president. The House Speaker has yet to name impeachment managers, has yet to formally send over the paperwork. What is the advantage to holding off?
Well, at this point, the American public is focused on the holidays and, want to get through the new year, I think. And so I don't think Nancy Pelosi sees that there's any rush. We did have Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who's considered a moderate or a swing Republican, raise some questions about McConnell's coordination with the White House on the trial. And that's an interesting signal. Usually we look at Susan Collins, we look at Murkowski, you look at a few other, Lamar Alexander of Tennessee. You sort of look at those people, but Lamar Alexander's retiring, so the focus hasn't been so much on him. But the fact that she's willing to go public with those question marks, I think, puts a little more pressure on McConnell to see whether he can craft a trial that will make everybody happy, which is a big challenge.
And I think it's interesting to point out, we probably should point out, that Republican Senator Murkowski of Alaska says that she is disturbed, that's the word she used, by the Senate Majority Leader's intention to coordinate the trial with the White House. She's not concerned so much about what the president is accused of, so much as the process in which they're going about listening to the testimony and handling the trial.
Right. I mean, she's basically said she's undecided. She wants to see more evidence. She wants to see everything laid out in the trial. So she doesn't want to just take the House impeachment procedure and make a decision one way or the other. She wants the Senate to conduct its own process. And I think that's exerting Senate power, both vis-a-vis the House and also the president. And I wonder, how that will resonate with her colleagues, particularly those who are coming from vulnerable seats who are up for re-election in 2020.
Let's talk a little bit about the election in 2020. Have we ever seen an impeachment in progress during an election year? What could that mean for the political landscape?
Well, I mean, this is what's so different about the comparison to Bill Clinton's impeachment situation, which was in his second term. He couldn't run again. But a lot of people point to the fact that he was fairly highly rated when he left office. And had he run again, it's quite possible he would have won. So even from that case, we couldn't determine that impeachment would, ruin your reelection chances. But this is, a different scenario on all sorts of levels. And, what you're seeing also is some reticence, I think, some concern on the Democratic side for those who are running for president. Remember, there are at least five senators who will have to sit in that trial. And if that trial goes 3, 4, 5 weeks, that's running right into Iowa and New Hampshire, possibly even South Carolina. That advantages Biden. So what's interesting is a longer trial not only disadvantages the other senators who are challenging Biden for the nomination, but it advantages Biden, and that disadvantages Trump. Because if Biden can build more strength, then that hurts Trump. So a longer trial isn't necessarily good for the Democrats who are running in the Senate. It might be good for Biden, and it might be bad for Trump. So there's lots of other things going on because it's a presidential election year that really shape how long this trial should go in terms of political incentives.
Are you factoring into that equation the status of voters' impeachment fatigue? Are voters not sick of this already?
Yeah, but the problem for people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Cory Booker and Amy Klobuchar and Michael Bennet, all these people who are stuck in the Senate, is that Biden can take that and run with it. In other words, he can just talk about himself. He can talk about turning the page on everything, turning the page on impeachment, but turning the page on Trump. All the while, his competitors are stuck in the Senate, 5-6 days a week. So that's just, a dream for Biden in that way. And that's another consideration, I think, that's pushing back against the Schumer proposal to have a lot of witnesses and go forward with a trial that lasts 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. So there's pressure on the Democratic side in terms of the presidential race not to let this trial go on that long.
There's so many different ways that this could sort of game out, and then it would benefit one side or the other, depending on how it games out. But it also sounds like it could kind of split the Democrats, depending on who you're rooting for.
Yeah, really, that's a great point. It splits some Democrats in the House who voted for impeachment, but now have to go home and explain it, and they're just changing the subject. They just want to talk about, drug prices, or they want to talk about, difficulty in the climate of politics. How do we bridge the gap? They want to talk about anything except impeachment in these swing districts, those that were won by Trump in 2016, but won by the Democrats in 2018. And those are part of Nancy Pelosi's base in terms of winning the House again. So they want to turn the page, and then I think the Senate just wants to get rid of it. They know they're not going to convict this guy. Now the question is, does Trump keep, aggravating the situation? And you talk about impeachment fatigue, and I keep talking about Trump fatigue. 9, 10, 11 more months of this angry guy. We don't know how that'll play out. The economy is great. All signs point to a re-election of a president who's presiding over a really great economy. But now you see some pundits and even political scientists arguing over whether the economy will have that much impact in this particular election. You have to think that it will, and I think it's Trump's to lose at this point. But, enough of Trump fatigue could turn people to someone like Biden. So this is you're absolutely right. It's just so uncertain. I think it's going to stay uncertain for a really long time.
You made an interesting point. I want to build on that for a second, because the president did say right after the House voted for impeachment that the House cheapened it, alluding to that whether it's used or if it's threatened too often, it really loses its gravitas. Is there an argument to be made there, considering that instead of using it as a weapon of last resort, Texas Republican Representative Louis Gohmert also said, well, if you do this to our president, we can do it to your president. I mean, are we watching this changing of the use of impeachment?
Well, the biggest bubble, the most important bubble, I think, for voting are people basically between the ages of 45, 50, and 75, let's just say. That's the highest rates of turnout consistently among that demographic. And that demographic, at least over 45 or 50, knows the Clinton impeachment, experienced the Clinton impeachment, which was an impeachment over lying under oath about a sexual affair, an adultery affair on his wife. This is about extorting, another foreign leader for about $400 or so million in aid just to get dirt on your opponent. I think there can be an argument made that the Clinton impeachment was political and cheap impeachment, and you can make an argument that because the aid was actually released and that there was no investigation of Hunter Biden, at least at the moment, that this also wasn't necessary to do because it didn't even happen. So in terms of blocking aid to Ukraine, not that he didn't try to extort. So these are opposite sides of the coin, but the audience that is most important in presidential elections knows the Clinton impeachment. So I'm not sure the Republican argument is going to do very well on that score, given that people remember Ken Starr, Whitewater, Monica Lewinsky. They remember all that. And they're the ones who are going to get out the polls in the biggest numbers in 2020.
We've only got about 20 seconds here. Professor Schiller, how quickly can this process resume?
Well, they could get it started, in a week and a half. I mean, they can come back on the 2nd or 3rd, and then come back, name everybody, and start in literally a week and a half and get it done. I mean, I think they can. Whether they will, that is the big question mark.
We'll watch it with you. Wendy Schiller is a political science professor at Brown University. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time. Read more about these stories on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal. And a reminder, you can follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
Amy, thank you. S&P futures, they're higher this morning, up 8 points. Dow futures up 93. NASDAQ futures up 33. The DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. CAC in Paris up 0.5%. And the FTSE 100 up 0.4%. We are watching the markets with global benchmarks at fresh records this morning. 10-year Treasury up 2.30 seconds, yield 1.88%. And the yield on the 2-year 1.61%. And NYMEX crude oil is up 0.3% at $61.87 a barrel. COMEX gold little changed. Bloomberg surveillance is straight ahead with Paul Sweeney and Shonali Basic. And for Amy Morris, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
To LeBron, slam dunk! The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
Hard pulls back, trying to make it 11-2. Kawhi Leonard is all over the place. 84-75, 27 for the board man.
This Saturday, the Toronto Raptors are at the Boston Celtics. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we're still seeing people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Friday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. I'm Paul Sweeney sitting in for Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow. Believe it or not, both of them are off today. Joining me this morning in the surveillance studios, our good friend Shonali Bosick, who covers all things Global Wall Street for Bloomberg TV and Radio. Shonali, thanks so much for coming in.
Good morning, Paul.
2 days in a row. That's great. We appreciate it. Coming up on the program, healthy holiday retail sales suggest a U.S. consumer remains the big driver for this U.S. economy. We'll discuss with Citi's chief U.S. economist, Andrew Hollenhurst. He is here in studio with us. Plus, we'll take a look at the beleaguered global energy sector for potential opportunities in 2020. But first, let's get a quick check of the price action here. Guess what? Again, we're grinding up. We're melting up. However you want to talk about it. We have green on the screen here. S&P futures up 8, Dow futures up 91, NASDAQ futures up 32. Looking at the treasuries, not much action here. The 10-year Treasury up about 2/30 seconds, pushing that yield down just slightly to 1.88%. You compare that to the 2-year at 1.62%. So a little bit of steepening there in the yield curve. Just taking a quick look at oil. We're going to talk about oil coming up. $61.87 a barrel. WTI, that's up slightly here. Good, strong year for crude. Bloomberg Surveillance is brought to you by Adipar. Adipar's portfolio reporting and insights platform is trusted by thousands of wealth advisors from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions. Learn more at ADDEPAR.com. Adipar, and we appreciate their support. So let's take a look at the economy, shall we? We have the consumer very strong. We had retail sales. Looks like the holiday retail sales are going to come in about 3.5% growth year over year. That looks very strong for the U.S. consumer. We've seen that before with strong job numbers, strong retail sales. Let's get a sense of whether that will continue to push us in 2020. Andrew Hollenhurst, he's the chief U.S. economist for Citi. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. He just did a stint on Bloomberg Television, so we are working Andrew hard today. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is your thought for 2020? I mean, the consumer and the U.S. economy seem to be kind of chugging along here.
Yeah, I think it still continues to power ahead. I mean, we've had this really positive story around what's going on with jobs, what's going on with wages. That's supporting incomes and in turn supporting spending. So, historically low unemployment rate. These are all the kind of elements that you need for a strong consumer economy. Now, more concerned about what's going on in other places in the economy, but the consumer, if you just focus on that, very, very strong.
What can break the streak?
So, a few things that we were worried about in 2019 that you would still think about going into 2020. One is do you get a big correction in risk assets? Now, we don't think that will happen, but if you were to get a big drop, then we saw that at the end of 2018 going into 2019, and consumers pulled back. So if we get a big drop in equity markets, that's something that could slow down consumption. The other thing that could, of course, always change is the positives that we're talking about. If those jobs numbers start to slow down, and there was a time in 2019 when it looked like maybe they were, now as we're going into 2020, it actually looks like they're holding up quite well. But so either this kind of pullback in sentiment among consumers, that's something that we're watching, or do you just get a fundamental slowing in job growth?
So I listened to you on Bloomberg Television earlier today, and you said that impeachment wasn't necessarily something that would upend the markets, but that the election rhetoric could. And I'm wondering, how does that play into this kind of healthy economy that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, so these are the things that are much harder to kind of forecast or get your hands around as an economist. So like I was saying, you have very different visions that are being presented for the U.S. economy. Of course, that's something that investors have to take into account. Of course, that's something that economists have to take into account. It still looks like the modal outcome, the most likely outcome, is that, well, the U.S. economy kind of continues along on its current trajectory, which is this, roughly 2% growth. But I think the point I was making and will continue to make is that this will be an important theme in 2020. Investors watching what's going on with both the politics between parties and within the parties, trying to figure out what this really means for the economy.
So, Andrew, one of the, that 1/3 of the economy that is manufacturing, business investment, that is weak. We've got the manufacturing sector contracting now for several months in a row. Do we just kind of ignore that because the consumer is still so strong?
Yeah, so definitely don't ignore it. I think that is the key downside risk that we want to continue watching. Some positive stories there. One is it looks like, and I think it's too early to say anything more than it looks like, but it looks like globally maybe the weak manufacturing story has bottomed a little bit. You see globally that data starting to turn over, and if that continues, then that would be a positive dynamic for the U.S. Also, you have these idiosyncratic U.S.-specific issues. You had an auto workers strike, and you had the grounding of certain aircraft. If production picks up as we head into 2020 around those two stories, that could be positive for manufacturing, but particularly on the airplane story, that keeps getting pushed further and further out. So,
yeah, I don't know how we... I guess my question to you is, how do you kind of account for that? How do economists account for that? Because I think about the supply chain for Boeing. It just kind of stretches coast to coast and, a whole host of industries.
Yeah, it's definitely a macroeconomically significant issue. This is not, some small company-specific issue. It really matters for the U.S. economy. And that supply chain is really important. So when, we're talking about a shutdown of production in January, but then does the supply chain actually continue to produce? If the supply chain continues producing during that time, then you're not producing final completed aircraft, but you still are keeping those workers employed in the supply chain. You're producing parts that ultimately go into those final aircraft. So that can kind of support demand while we wait for a full restarting of production, which should happen at some point.
Something we talk a lot about at this table is the impact of automation on jobs. Obviously, the manufacturing sector has seen a lot of this. It's floating into a lot of other sectors. I cover the banks. We see thousands of job cuts around the world, partially in the name of automation. When you're thinking of automation, how do you factor this into your longer-term outlook on what happens with jobs and what happens with growth?
Yeah, so this matters so much, and you have to be careful because there have been many times in history when we've looked at technological advances and said, this is the end of labor, this is the end of workers, there's going to be no role for humans, and there always has been. But what we need to be very careful about with this transition to more automation is that those opportunities are created for the existing workforce. So we know, as you were mentioning, there are certain industries where it's just not going to make sense for humans to be doing the jobs that they used to be doing in those industries. But are we creating new opportunities? Are we creating new engines of growth? So maybe you don't. It's not clear yet. It's not clear yet that we are. And I think that is the kind of difficulty of navigating this transition. So maybe you have less traditional manufacturing jobs. We should have more jobs around things like 3D printing. Are we really seeing those jobs come through? That's what we're looking for, and that would be an ultimately positive story for the economy if we get there.
So, Andrew, we've, the trade has been such a big issue for 2019. It's kind of faded over the last couple of weeks a little bit, at least, in terms of the news flow and the tweet flow. How do you kind of gauge the trade uncertainty into your economic forecast for 2020?
Yeah, so any uncertainty, and in particular uncertainty around trade, is something that's going to tend to hold back investment. People are going to want to wait. They're going to want to see what the actual outcome is. That's true around trade. It's true around politics, Brexit, everything. It does seem that at least in a short-term sense, we've had a decrease in uncertainty. So there's still massive uncertainty about where this story goes over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. But as you look out over the next 6 months, it seems like there are at least the contours of a phase one deal that have been agreed to. It looks like these agricultural exports are going to be restarted. So all of that is short-term positive, and that should help to unleash some of the pent-up investment that was waiting for some short-term resolution of uncertainty. Now, do you have a long-term resolution of uncertainty where you can think about making plans for the next 5 years, the next 10 years? I think that's a lot less clear.
Can I ask you also about the Federal Reserve? Because I think you have a more balanced view than a lot of people who believe, yes, this is definitely QE, and no, this is absolutely not. But can you explain to us how much is the Fed propping up the economy more than people realize right now?
So there is a very important sense in which the Fed is supporting the economy, and that's largely through low interest rates, and they've achieved low long-term interest rates, both through their bond purchase programs, which I would say what they're doing right now, I would not call it QE. I think many in the market will see it as QE, and we'll come back to that in a second. But low long-term rates, which is partly these QE programs, but partly just the fact that the Fed has held rates relatively low. It looks like the top of this interest rate hiking cycle is going to be sub 3%, and we're thinking about staying around these levels, or maybe in the future going down from these levels. So that's going to keep rates low. That's going to support the economy. In terms of this specific program, at the end of the day, they're buying T-bills. That's a 3-month, 6-month liability of the U.S. government that pays interest. They take those T-bills out of supply and they add reserves, which are an overnight interest-paying liability of the U.S. government. So it's not clear that that's really doing much.
Okay, so we're not going to call it QE at this moment. Andrew Holland-Horst, thanks so much for joining us. Andrew is the chief U.S. economist for Citi. We appreciate him coming here to our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, giving us his thoughts for the economy. Again, as we just kind of take a look at the most recent data point, call it holiday retail sales, pretty strong, suggesting once again that the consumer is pretty strong, which contends once again that the U.S. economy remains on pretty fair footing. Let's get national headlines right now with Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, Sonali. The Kazakhstan plane with the 98 people aboard that crashed shortly after takeoff early today has left at least 12 people dead. 49 others were hospitalized with injuries. Officials say there was no fuel fire. The U.S. Coast Guard says it is searching for a helicopter with 7 people on board that failed to return from a tour off the Hawaiian island of Kauai last evening. The owner reported the helicopter was overdue at 6:06 p.m. Israel's embattled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu easily fended off a rare challenge to his leadership of the Likud party. Netanyahu will now lead Likud into Israel's third election in less than a year. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Poll.
Michael Barr, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Looking at the futures here, up 8 on the S&P. The Dow Jones futures up 92. NASDAQ up 35. Another grinded up day. We'll take it here at year end. This is The Who. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
The Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
The Norwegian sale is now on. Fly to Europe from £29.90, North America from £134.90, or South America from £189.90. And with low fares to over 150 other destinations, the world has never been closer. Start your journey at Norwegian.com. All fares are one way from London Gatwick. Baggage fees apply. Travel periods vary by route. Visit our website for more details. Sale ends 13th of January.
Start 2020 as a millionaire. 10 guaranteed UK millionaires in this New Year's Eve's Euro Millions. Whoa, that's a massive number.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Sherry Ann.
It's been a banner year for stocks in 2019 globally. Our next guest, though, questions whether it can continue. Baker Avenue Asset Management Chief Strategist King Lip joins us from San Francisco. King, great to have you with us. So we have seen a very different end to 2019 from what we've seen in 2018, right? So the key question, though, seems to be, can this trend continue in 2020 if, for example, the market is a forward pricing mechanism? Are we supposed to expect earnings growth perhaps next year?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a question that a lot of our clients are asking. You know, after 30% gains in the S&P, can it continue? For now, our base case scenario is that, yes, we could see higher gains in 2020, albeit much more modest gains. And I think those gains are going to be fueled by the fact that we're going to still have some earnings growth, albeit sort of low single digits. But most importantly, you know, rates will likely continue to remain low in 2020. So those two things combined, you're likely to have a tailwind for stocks still going into 2020.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures moving higher this morning, along with stocks worldwide, propelling global benchmarks to fresh records as robust gains in retail and technology shares make 2019 a year to remember for risk assets. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 8 points this morning. Dow futures up 94. NASDAQ futures up 35. The DAX in Germany's up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury up 230 seconds, yield 1.88%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.3% or 19 cents at $61.87 a barrel, and COMEX gold little changed up 20 cents to $15.1460 an ounce. The euro at 1.1152 against the dollar, British pound 1.3088, and the yen is at 109.50. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Shanali.
Hey, Karen, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We continue to see really disturbing images coming from Hong Kong. That protest there just showed no signs of winding down. The persistence, I think, is really amazing to a lot of us who are watching these issues. You got the latest here. We welcome Karen Lee. She is Bloomberg News Greater China Government Editor. She joins us on the phone. Karen, thanks so much for joining us. Give us the latest of what is happening in Hong Kong right now.
Well, there are protests scheduled for tonight in an area called Sha Tin, which has seen some of the more violent protests over the past 6 months. And then again over the weekend in an area near the Chinese border. And this is leading up to a major rally that's been planned for New Year's Day. It's organized by the Civil Human Rights Front, which is the organization that's helmed some of the biggest peaceful protests since these demonstrations against China's grip began in June. So we're going to be watching over the next few days to see what the turnout's like, how big the clashes between protesters and police get, if there are clashes at all, and to see if we can draw any signals from all of this, especially the turnout on January 1st, as to how much momentum this movement sustains going into 2020.
So, Karen, just give us a sense, an updated view of kind of what the protesters are really protesting for right now. It's been months and months and months. What kind of change are they really looking for right now?
Yeah, well, their demands have shifted a lot over the past 6 months, and this, of course, began as blowback against a really unpopular extradition law that would have allowed transfers to mainland China. And it morphed pretty quickly into this wider movement against Beijing's grip. And protesters' demands in that time, since that time, have changed. Right now, one of the biggest demands, if not the biggest, is an independent inquiry into aggressive behavior by police and their conduct in dispersing these protests, going back to some of those images you were talking about with these big clouds of tear gas hovering over these areas of Hong Kong where you never thought you would see tear gas, over the city center, and again, even on Christmas Eve, over a popular shopping area in front of the Peninsula Hotel, which is one of the most venerated hotels here, during this, what has been a major shopping season for this economy that so runs on tourism and retail. So we're going to be looking at the new year, really, not only to see whether this sustains its momentum, but whether the demands shift again, and what they shift to.
Can you give us a sense of the tone here? Because over the holiday, hundreds were arrested. I'm looking at headlines now. How much is this really escalating?
This has really become the new normal in a way for this city, at least for parts of it. And what we saw on Christmas Eve was not shocking to those of us who've been watching it for a while. We've become quite used to seeing these kind of clashes scattered around town, especially in the area where they happened. And we've seen more violence than we saw on Christmas Eve. We've been seeing occasional live ammunition. We've seen rubber bullets fired from pretty close range. College campuses turn into what look like battlegrounds. So really the context for Christmas Eve's importance was more that it happened on the holiday and that it happened in an area that in years past would have been full of tourists and holiday shoppers. And this year it was a bit of a different picture, and I think for a lot of people it really served to show what's happened to the city over the past year and the kind of impact that all of this has had on tourism and retail. both of which have taken a massive hit. So we're going to see what happens now on New Year's Day, but really the city bracing for a much bigger protest in the next few days.
Well, that was what I was going to ask next. What can we expect on January 1st?
Well, this protest is being organized by the Civil Human Rights Front. It is the organization that has brought millions of people out onto the street at various points throughout all of this. They organized the huge marches earlier in the summer that really kicked this movement off and got it in the global headlines. And they're still waiting for a police permit to march. They don't have that yet, but even if they don't, we think that people will still probably come out and they'll protest illegally and there will be more arrests. So we're going to be looking to see what the turnout is, and they generally get much bigger turnout than other protests organized by other either opposition groups or activists. So, and this is going to happen on a day when people are off here. People might want to send a signal that they do intend to fight into 2020, and if they want to do that, this is going to be a good day to do it. So it really will be a signal to us of what we might expect going into the new year and the first few months of the new year.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate that on-the-spot reporting from Hong Kong. Karen Lee, Bloomberg News, Greater China Government Editor. Just an extraordinary story, Shonali. It's just been 6 months plus of this unrest, and it's just not quite sure what the end game is for the protesters. And quite frankly, it's almost, you kind of look at it, I'm kind of surprised that China hasn't taken a harder line on the protesters.
It's truly amazing. A friend of mine actually made a video over the weekend stringing together the footage from all the different media outlets overlaid with the song Grace.
Okay.
And it was really amazing how it's starting to touch the hearts of people across the globe.
Yeah, it really is. And, the Walt Disney Company reported in the most recent quarterly earnings that, the tourism to the Hong Kong Disney Resort property is down significantly. And so as Karen was reporting from Hong Kong, the tourism business, which is such a big business, a part of their economy of Hong Kong, has obviously been impacted significantly, and that Disney data point kind of adds to it. So, again, at some point, it just feels like China could take a bigger role there as it relates to kind of cracking down, given that this has been ongoing for so long. And the question is kind of where does it end? Kind of what are the protesters really moving towards? And can there be any type of, kind of discussion or compromise between the two sides? But in the interim, we will certainly follow that closely at Bloomberg News. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Your retirement fund will get a little fatter today. Stocks are expected to open higher again after yet another record close. For the year, the Dow was up 22%, the S&P 29%, and the NASDAQ 36%. Amazon was the biggest driver for tech stocks and the NASDAQ yesterday, thanks to Amazon's record sales and the addition of even more Prime members. Bloomberg Intelligence thinks the raging bull market will continue to plow ahead into the new year. Electric bikes are the latest thing, but not in New York. Governor Cuomo vetoed a bill that would have legalized them in the state, saying he was concerned about safety because there was no provision for safety helmets. Meanwhile, Los Angeles may force Uber and Lyft drivers to use electric vehicles to cut greenhouse gas emissions and get more EVs on the streets of L.A. And the rich did get richer in 2019. The Bloomberg Billionaires Index shows the 500 wealthiest people in the world added $1.2 trillion so far this year. That brings their total wealth to $5.9 trillion, 25% more than a year ago. I'm Chuck Kamlick, Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
I can find and find fund my car. From a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, get up to 50% off showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. Selected ranges excluded. See wix.co.uk.
Do you hear that? The Asda Up to Half Price sale is now on. For a limited time only, you can save up to half price on fashion, home and electricals, in-store and at George.com. But hurry, our New Year celebrations can't last forever. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Delivery charges may apply.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
We're 2 hours away from the opening bell. Let's get you updated on the news that you need to know at this hour. The 2019 bull run continues with stocks around the world climbing to fresh records. All three major U.S. indices hit all-time highs yesterday, with the Nasdaq closing above 9,000 for the first time. Profits at Chinese industrial enterprises rebounded in November as factory gate deflation eased and domestic demand improved. Industrial profits rose 5.4% in the month from a year earlier after 3 months of declines. Tesla will start delivering China-built cars on Monday as it mounts a push to expand in the world's largest electric vehicle market. The stock, which has more than doubled since June, is up another 1% in early trading. It's 7:30 on Wall Street. Let's bring in Michael Barr now to tell us what else is going on in the world. Michael.
Paul Sonali, thank you very much. A deadly plane crash outside Almaty, Kazakhstan's largest city, killed at least a dozen people and seriously injured 50 others early this morning. The Beck airplane was carrying 98 passengers when it crashed into a concrete fence and a two-story building shortly after takeoff. Di Whittingham, chief executive of the UK Flight Safety Committee, said the investigation will want to hear from the experienced voices inside the plane before determining a cause.
We don't know yet what sort of state the flight crew are in. Clearly, those will be key witnesses for any inquiry if indeed they've survived the impact.
The Coast Guard says a tour helicopter with 7 people aboard went missing in Hawaii last evening. The NYPD says they have found the 14-year-old they believe was holding the knife during the robbery-turned-murder of a college freshman at a park near Barnard College, ending a 2-week manhunt across the city. Investigators say although the suspect was released from custody, charges could still be filed in the death of 18-year-old Tessa Majors, pending results of the suspect's DNA test. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Poll.
Michael Barr, thank you so much. It is 7:32 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's Rob Bushka.
Good morning, Paul. Even when it seems things aren't going the Knicks and Nets way, the pride of the city is on the line as the rivalry was renewed again at Barclays Center. Julius Randle, he impressed with 33 points as the Knicks beat the Nets 94-82. Brooklyn scored just 15 points in the first quarter. Elsewhere in the East, the Pistons blast the Wizards. Everything else was out West. MVP candidate Luka Doncic made his return after a 2-week layoff with the bad ankle, and that led Dallas to a win at home over San Antonio. Memphis won in OKC. Timberwolves in double overtime beat the Kings, while the Jazz blasted the Blazers, courtesy of Donovan Mitchell, who scored 35. Back to work for all three local clubs on the ice tonight when the Rangers host the Hurricanes. Devils entertain the Maple Leafs, while the Islanders visit the Blackhawks at 8:30. And Christmas came on the 26th for the Giants' Marcus Golden, who had a stat corrected, bumping him from 9.5 sacks to 10, which means he earned a $1 million incentive bonus. And that's your NBC Bloomberg Sports Update. Paul?
Rob Bushka, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Looking at the markets here, we have green on the screen, another risk on day as we close out this Christmas week. Light volume, but certainly some movement up in the market. Continue to grind higher. We have the S&P futures up just under 9 points. The Dow up 96 points, 28,715 on the Dow for you. NASDAQ up 37 points. Looking at the treasuries, not much movement there. We have the 10-year treasury up 230 seconds, pushing that yield down just slightly to 1.88%. The 2-year at 1.62%. That's your price action. This is Bloomberg. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, designated an innovation and economic prosperity university for its economic engagement. More at njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Paul Shinali, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. The Constitutional Court in Ankara says Turkey's nationwide access ban on Wikipedia is unlawful. The ruling was reported by state-run media. The court says banning the online encyclopedia constitutes a violation of free speech. Turkey first blocked the site in April of 2017 because it refused to remove content that accused the government of cooperating with terrorist organizations. New York's governor has vetoed a bill to allow electric scooters and bikes statewide. Governor Andrew Cuomo's veto message said the bill overwhelmingly passed by lawmakers didn't include enough safety measures, such as a helmet requirement. He declared that failure to include these basic measures renders the legislation fatally flawed. Cuomo said electric bikes and scooters must be regulated to protect public safety and said he looks forward to working with lawmakers on the issue in 2020, leaving open the chance lawmakers may try to pass a bill with more safety measures next year. Uber Technologies reportedly has closed on the purchase of a nearly 600-acre parcel of land near Pittsburgh to build a test track for a self-driving car. The report from Business Insider cites an Uber spokesperson who did not offer details on when the track will be up and running. And that's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Paul Shinali.
Bob Moon, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Right now, 5 things you need to know to start your day. That's brought to you by Portfolio Analyst, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analyst to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Sign up for free at portfolioanalyst.com. Shinali, let's start with Apple. I was just looking at that this morning. We were talking about it on Bloomberg Television earlier. The stock is up 84% year to date, one of its best years in a long time. What do you think is driving this thing?
It's pretty remarkable, given that earlier this year, the stock was really suffering from trade war concerns, slowing iPhone sales, and now you're right, 5G is really one of the big things that people are very excited about going into next year, with Apple hitting record highs again.
Yeah, exactly. I think people are expecting a big one of those refresh cycles on the phones from 5G, but it's also about the I guess the AirPods, which have been sold out everywhere. You can't even get them on Amazon. Are you an AirPod?
I love them.
You
I love them.
So it's a noise canceling AirPod. Is that what you have? Or
I just have the normal
ones. Okay.
But when you're running, you don't have the cords to deal with.
Right. Exactly. All right. Another name. It's interesting when we think about tech, big tech, the FANG stocks. We think about Amazon. That stock is up this year, but it's kind of underperforming slightly the NASDAQ and the S&P. But boy, very strong holiday season.
Very strong holiday season, and it makes me wonder what it means for brick and mortar retail. We've seen a lot of bankruptcies already this year. We've seen a lot of companies struggling. In D.C., they had a huge Forever 21, and it was sad to just see that start to close down.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. How much of your holiday purchases were Amazon?
None. Yeah.
You actually walked to the store?
We have a Bloomingdale's next door to Bloomberg.
Okay, very good. Looking at when we talk about the FANG stocks, tech, you talk about, the NASDAQ pushing above 9,000 yesterday, just extraordinary. I mean, it just kind of shows you, on the positive side, the strength of tech, the strength of the FANG names. But on the other side, it's like maybe the breadth of the market movement is not there. That's kind of something I've been trying to discuss with some strategists, because to me, if we're just being driven up by a relatively small number of tech names, what does that mean for the real health of the NASDAQ and tech market?
Check it out. The top movers in the NASDAQ, 4 out of 5 of them are biotech and medical device stocks.
Okay.
So that's something people forget. And in the S&P, the top 3 biggest movers this year were all semiconductors.
Semiconductors, yeah, big move with the better trade tensions or issues, easing trade issues out there. So one of the big drivers, obviously, of the market, as you talk to strategists and economists, has been the Fed. Expectations, obviously, are that the Fed will remain on the sidelines. I guess the real question is the next move by the Fed a cut, or is there a scenario where there could actually, if the data supports it, actually be a hike in 2020?
The funny thing is things keep changing every couple of months. I keep on giving this anecdote, but listening to Bank of America CEO just in the summertime, he thought that a cut was unfathomable. And that's coming from one of America's biggest banks, and things change so quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I think the expectation again is probably sitting on the sidelines. If there is a move, maybe sometime late in the year, September, there might be a cut. I suggested to Lisa Abramowitz last week that if the data is strong enough, that they might even hike, and she quote unquote rejected that assertion. So I'm going to stay on the sidelines with that. All right, last thing. Are you an e-bike? Have you ever used an e-bike?
I have never used an e-bike, but I follow all the companies.
I am an e-bike owner. I
Really?
love it. It's the greatest thing in the world. It's power assisted, so you still have to pedal, and it's the greatest thing in the world. I love it. They were introduced into New York, but apparently Governor Cuomo says no.
Do you understand the safety concerns here?
I do. And in fact, when in New York City, the folks delivering food, for example, they are flying all around the city, and those bikes go very fast, so I can understand the concerns. But I think, they were introduced in New York for a short period earlier this year, but then they got pulled.
The companies involved, Uber, Lyft, Bird Rides, Lime, have raised hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes, and in some cities, I've taken that electric scooter, the Bird. That's also pretty cool. But I think Governor Cuomo is saying, all right, let's just step back here. New York City is a different animal. New York State's a different animal. Let's think about the safety here, the helmets here. So it looks like Governor Cuomo is putting a short-term kind of hold on the scooters and the e-bikes and all those kinds of things. But you got to feel like they're going to come to New York City at some point. They're all over the country. So anyway, that's the 5 things you need to know here as we finish up the week. We have S&P futures up 8. This is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
To LeBron, slam dunk. The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss.
Harden pulls back, trying to make it 11-2.
Kawhi Leonard is all over the place. 84-75, 27 for the board man.
This Saturday, the Toronto Raptors are at the Boston Celtics. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2018, when Texas kicker Cameron Dicker nails the game-winning field goal in the Red River Showdown against Oklahoma.
A 40-yard field goal try. Good snap and hold. The kick on its way, and the kick is good! It's good! Dicker, the kicker, comes through, and with 9 seconds.
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and flows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
The Coast Guard is battling bad weather off the Hawaiian island of Kauai, searching for a missing tour helicopter. More from Dan Simon.
One pilot, 6 passengers, 2 of whom are believed to be minors. Now, this helicopter was supposed to return to its base about 5:20 local time on Thursday p.m., and when it didn't, the owner of the helicopter touring company alerted the Coast Guard, and the search began.
Fresh crews will pick up the search at dawn. The wintry weather that snarled traffic over much of Southern California is on the move now.
We have winter storm warnings across the southwestern U.S. and then winter storm watches across the plains in anticipation of this system moving eastward, and move east it will.
Meteorologist Derek Van Dam. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu takes 72% of the vote in the Likud party primary. Russia confirming this morning it will appeal its 4-year Olympic ban for manipulating doping data. I'm Michael Toscano.
Interconnect here.
Let's start with the national security implications of this.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
What could the United States do to help?
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stocks are moving higher this morning along with shares worldwide, propelling global benchmarks to fresh records as robust gains in retail and technology shares make 2019 a year to remember for risk assets. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, they're up 8 points this morning. Dow futures up 90, NASDAQ futures up 32. The DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.88%. The yield on the 2-year 1.62%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.2% or 9 cents at $61.77 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1%, up $1.40 to $15.70 an ounce. The euro 1.1151 against the dollar. The yen 109.50. The British pound is at 1.3090. Amazon's purchase of a minority stake in UK food startup Deliveroo faces a British probe and another sign of mounting antitrust scrutiny of U.S. tech giants. And Yeti Holdings set up for 2020 is looking stronger given growth in its footprint of physical stores. That according to Piper Jaffray. Yeti is expected to open between 4 to 6 stores in both 2020 and 2021. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Shanali.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much for that. We appreciate it. I'm just looking at Brent crude right here. The good news, I guess, is it's 20% above its August low, but it's also about 10% below its April high. Lots of volatility in crude around the world, I guess a kind of a proxy on what's going on in global trade. To get a sense of kind of what we should be thinking about as we think about oil for 2020, we welcome Kevin Book, Clearview Energy Partners Head of Research. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. So as we take a look at crude around the world for 2020, is it fair to say this is just a